My name is Carlin Barasenko, and you're listening to the Actively Unwoke podcast. You can find full archives of my podcast over on my Substack, which is Carlin, Karlyn.substack.com. Click the podcast link in the upper menu. That will take you to the full archives. You can also access it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And of course, if you appreciate the work I'm doing, I would love it if you would become a supporter today. I am 100% completely funded by you. Sign up on the Substack for a monthly or annual subscription, $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys keep me in business. You guys allow me the time to research and analyze the far left and teach you guys about it, and I really appreciate it. I can't do it without you. So today I want to talk about 3 things that we can expect to see from the far left as we transition into another Trump presidency and up to and including and even beyond the inauguration for, say, the first 100 days, because I do think there are 3 things that we can expect to see from the far left that right now, in my mind, based on what I've seen the far left talking about, what I've seen them doing, how I've seen them shifting strategy ever since the election, these things are pretty much, it's almost like a no-brainer to me. I know that I spend more time listening to the far left and watching their content and stuff than most normal people do, but there's just no way that these 3 things are not going to happen, or at least that that's the direction that they are very strongly pushing in. So I'm reporting this, I guess, with a very high degree of confidence that this is absolutely true. It is not the only thing we're going to see from the far left. I'm sure we'll see many other things as well. Some we might be able to predict now and some we can't. But of these 3 things, I am resoundingly confident. Thing number 1, the far left loves that Trump got elected, and the far left is using this in order to recruit as many people from the Democratic Party that were disaffected about the results and maybe no longer trust the party. We're talking about normie Democrats, liberals, progressives, maybe people who were a little bit left-leaning centrists that ended up voting for Kamala because they're pro-choice or whatever the case may be. The real far left sees this as a recruiting boom. They're thrilled about Trump getting elected. This is why before the election I kept trying to tell people, Kamala Harris is not a communist. Kamala Harris is not a communist. Kamala Harris is not a communist. Everyone who was saying Kamala Harris is a communist, up to and including Trump himself, were lying to you. It was a political narrative. It was never real. And the reason I know that is because the real communists and the real socialists were going on and on and on and on and on and on and on in their trainings about how they don't like Kamala Harris. They're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. They consider voting for the Democratic Party to be the lesser of 2 evilisms. The only real exception to this on the far left was the Communist Party USA, whose leadership of the Communist Party USA, and by the way, CPUSA, which is abbreviated Communist Party USA, they're kind of irrelevant on the far left in terms of like the most prominent activists are concerned. They're not associated with them. They really talk about them. But I bring the Communist Party of the USA up because it is one of the parties, quote unquote parties, that people point to all the time when they're talking about communism in the United States. But what you need to know is they're actually not really that relevant on the far left. And thus proving my point, the leadership of the Communist Party USA came out this year and they said, we all need to vote for Joe Biden. And then of course they changed it to Kamala Harris. But what you need to know about that is the membership of the Communist Party USA, when their leadership came out and told them, yeah, we just got to suck it up and vote for the Democrats, the membership rebelled, and there was a mass excommunication of the membership from the Communist Party USA of all the people who would not endorse the leadership's decision. And that is actually what led to the formation of Jackson Hinkle's American Communist Party, which is kind of like, it's the social media Communist Party. It's got Jackson Hinkle, Haz al-Din, the guys from Midwestern Marx, and I don't mind the guys from Midwestern Marx, to be honest about it. I've talked to Noah a couple times. He's a good guy. But anyway, it formed this, the excommunicated members of the Communist Party USA formed the American Communist Party, and that's kind of the big social media Communist Party that people think of, but also not really that relevant in actual leftist circles. Anyway, I'm getting a little sidetracked. But what I want people to know is that the real socialists and communists are already doing presentations talking about how this is their moment. I really do believe that the real far left in America is going to recruit more people under Donald Trump's presidency than they did over the last 4 years under Joe Biden. because now they have an opposition, now they have an enemy, now they have something to attack. We'll talk more about that in a moment because they are very much shifting their strategy around that. But what people need to hear is they're not upset about Kamala losing. I know we can turn on more like Democrat and progressive and liberal echo chambers like MSNBC or looking at all like the online pundits like the Young Turks, and they might seem like they're really upset and they can't believe that Kamala Harris lost and how could this happen and how could the Democratic Party betray us. The real far left was basically saying that the entire time. This is why it's so important to understand the difference between Democrats, progressives, liberals, and actual far leftists, actual socialists, actual communists, because it is the actual socialists and communists that are driving every crazy idea. They're the ones organizing, they're the ones infiltrating the organizations, they're the ones pushing these ideas. Any of these ideas that make its way into the Democratic Party is just trickle down from the real far left, usually ends up being a really watered down version of it to begin with. These groups are not the same groups. And there are a lot of Democrats right now and a lot of progressives and a lot of liberals that are really going, the Democratic Party failed us. How could they lie to us? How could they do this to us? How could they saddle us with another 4 years of Trump? And the real far left, the real socialists and communists are standing there with open arms saying, hey guys, we tried to tell you the Democrats suck this entire time. Come join us. Come radicalize with us. The Democrats are never going to solve your problem. Look, they can't even get elected president. Come over to the real far left. And then they get them into their social circles, and then they get them into their book clubs, and then they get them going to their events, and they get them doing their protests, and they get them doing all the thing because there's going to be a lot of protests. More about that in a second. But this is their recruiting opportunity, and they are very aware of it, and they're going to take advantage of it. And a lot of these communist and socialist groups, like the Revolutionary Communists of America, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, they have seen a massive increase in their membership in the last year and a half or so. And that's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because they're getting better at recruiting, guys. They're getting better. They're getting more active. They're training more activists. They're out there handing out their literature, doing their stickering campaigns, doing all these things, doing their protests. They're already planning protests. We'll talk more about that in a second. They're getting better at this. And we're going to see those numbers grow. And so I already think there are far more far leftists in this country than people think there are. People think this is like small little numbers. I don't think it is. I think there are more than people think there are. And I think we're about to see massive exponential growth as they view this transition into the second Trump administration as being one of their most important recruiting drives ever. And that leads me to point number 2 of what I think we can expect to see from the far left. Because ever since October 7th of 2023, the far left basically shifted so after October 7th, the far left shifted their entire messaging strategy around doing more social issues. They were talking about a lot of trans stuff. They were talking about reproductive justice. They were talking really more about these kind of like culture war issues leading up to October 7th. On October 7th, it was like the brakes got slammed on and the pro-Palestine movement, the Free Palestine movement, took over the far left. And listen, I monitor the far left 6 days a week. I'm watching their presentations online 6 days a week. I'm looking through their content. I'm seeing what they're talking about. I'm seeing what books are published. Almost everything since October 7th has been about pro-Palestine, 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 free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. This is true of the protests. This is true of the presentations. This is true of the trainings. This is true of the books. Even when there were trainings that had nothing to do with Palestine and Israel at all, there would still be a free Palestine moment in those trainings. And I got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit happy because finally I don't have to watch as many Free Palestine trainings anymore because I'm starting to lose my mind. It is literally all the left has been talking about for over a year. Everything, everywhere. And now they're about to shift gears. It's not that they're going to let go of Palestine because they aren't. Palestine has been a major recruiting topic for them. And just so we're clear too, the topics that the left talks about, it's not that they don't care about these issues because they do care about these issues on some level, but the left is always going to be talking about the issue that is going to allow them to recruit the most people and spread their message in the most effective way. So whatever that current issue is, after October 7th, it became Palestine. They've gotten massive news coverage for Palestine. They've done massive protests about Palestine. They have done the campus protests were all about Palestine, and that's separate from the major protests that they had in Washington, D.C. and all over the country. They have gotten congressional hearings about Palestine where it's like they're the opposition force, but that allows them to have these protests. You cannot escape this issue on the far left. It has been a major recruiting tool because a lot of people, regardless of their politics, a lot of people don't like what's happening in Palestine. And so again, the left grabbed onto an issue. It had always been an issue for them in the background. It was never one of their major issues up until the stuff started getting real over there. But they grabbed onto that issue because it was the very, very best way for them to recruit. With Trump going into office, we are going to get a break because we're already seeing a shift in the messaging from all Palestine all the time to anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. And the issue that they zone in on specifically is going to depend on whatever issue Trump is pushing at any given time. We'll talk more about that in point number 3, because I do know what their first issue is going to be. But it's all about setting themselves up as the opposition force. Do you hate Trump? Come join us. Are you disappointed in the Democratic Party? Come join us. Here are all the things that Trump is doing that we don't like. You don't like those things either? Come join us. They're going to be shifting their messaging strategy around being what did they call themselves after 2016? The resistance movement. They are going to be doing a resist Trump thing again because that is what is going to allow them to get the most media, to get the most play, to be an active part of the political discussion. We're going to see a lot of protests around whatever Trump is trying to do. There's going to be a protest. And by the way, it doesn't actually really matter what Trump tries to do. No matter what the issue is, and this is something that Trump is just going to have to get used to, no matter what the issue is, the left will be on the opposing side of that issue because that is what allows them to recruit. And so it's not that the Free Palestine movement's going away. As long as the conflict in the Middle East is going on, we are still going to continue to see that movement because that movement has always existed. But I am actually very excited in a weird way, I admit, that we are about to start seeing a lot of other issues come to the forefront. And I think the left is going to probably experiment for a little while about which issues are getting us the most play. We're going to start seeing a resurgence in reproductive justice and queer issues, which is my personal dystopian favorite. And so I'm excited to see that. Environmental justice. What else are we probably going to see? We're going to see social justice issues come back again. It's particularly in relation to education because Trump keeps saying he's going to defund the Department of Education. They're not going to like that, even though the teachers union seems fine with it, which is a weird thing. But we're going to see a resurgence of all these old issues that kind of got lost over the last year plus with all the pro-Palestine stuff. And I'm here for it. I'm ready for a change of topic. And that leads me to point number 3. What is the first issue actually going to be? It's going to be immigration. 100% it's going to be immigration. Because one of the talking points that the far left has really latched onto is Trump's mass deportations immediately upon taking office. And this is what has been mobilizing the far left. And there are going to be major protests around the inauguration. And the groups that are leading those protests and are on the forefront of coordinating those protests are the immigration rights groups, the immigrant rights groups. I've actually there was a presentation, it was out of the People's Forum in New York City. I think the Party for Socialism and Liberation was heavily involved in this, but there was a presentation 2 days after the election where they announced their mass protest on the inauguration, and they're basically bringing together all of these immigrant rights groups. There were even illegal immigrants speaking on the presentation saying we have to protect our brothers and sisters. So this is going to be a major rallying cry for the left. Remember, the left does not believe in borders. The left believes that the borders uphold capitalism. They want to eliminate all borders. They want completely open immigration. They view this as a human rights issue. And so this is going to be one of those things where Trump is going to get a lot of pushback from them. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see this play out in terms of is Trump going to stick to his guns? Is he going to do the mass deportations? I personally hope he does. I would love to see it. I would love to see the National Guard brought out. I want to see illegal immigrants getting thrown into paddy wagons, gently, of course, and humanely, of course. But like people going into buildings and taking them all out. Like, I want to see, I really do. I want to see that. I want to see a massive show of force to get illegal immigrants out of this country. Maybe that's just me, but the far left is going to hate that, and they're going to protest it, and they're going to fight it tooth and nail, and they're going to call Trump every name in the book, and we're going to see who wins that fight. I really hope Trump sticks to his guns, because if Trump loses the first real fight with the far left, then that's going to set the tone for the entire administration. And the far left is going to know that if they show up at major events, if they yell loud enough, if they have the big enough protests, then they will win. And we can't send that message, so Trump's got to stay strong. But you can expect to see a lot of protest materials, general consternation, presentations about immigration, immigrant rights, all that good stuff. That's going to be one of their main forefront issues, just because the Trump campaign has made that an issue. Now, I say that with a little bit of a star on it, in that if Trump moves off of this issue of mass deportations, like if he just stops talking about it and he starts talking about something else instead, then probably that something else instead is going to become the main issue. But if they keep up with this idea that they're going to start mass deportations immediately upon Trump taking office, then that is going to be the issue. That is what the protests at the inauguration are going to mostly be about. There are going to be probably hundreds of thousands of far leftists at the inauguration. So if you're planning on going to the inauguration, my best advice for you is to be safe, be smart, do not be out after dark wearing your Trump stuff, be in groups of people, do not antagonize leftists. I'll probably do a little bit of a podcast recording like a little bit closer to the inauguration, because this almost seems like something that more conservative Trump voters need to hear. Do not do something stupid, because the far left is dangerous. They will beat you up. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in Washington, D.C. specifically. There is a very large Antifa presence in Washington, D.C. They are going to be at the inauguration. So if you're planning on going, have a good time and all that, but make sure you're also protecting yourself, especially after dark in Washington, D.C. Don't put yourself in a position where you're walking down the street in the middle of the night by yourself when it's dark out, wearing all your Trump stuff, carrying a Trump flag. You're going to get beat up. At best, you're going to get beat up if you do that. And there's just no point in antagonizing the far left. You have to be smart about this, okay? We can document what they're doing. We can talk about what they're doing. We can share information about what they're doing. You don't need to get yourself into a position where you're going to get physically hurt by them. And this is very real. They are not going to hesitate to do that, and people need to hear that. So, that was a lot, but those are my 3 points. The 3 things that I think we can absolutely count on from the far left. Number 1, they are going to use the Trump presidency to try to recruit as many disaffected Democrats, liberals, progressives as they possibly can. We can expect to see their ranks grow. They're probably going to grow more under Donald Trump's presidency than they did under Joe Biden's presidency. Number 2, they are shifting their entire messaging plan from being mostly pro-Palestine, free Palestine, to being mostly anti-Trump. Whatever Trump is for, they are against. This is the resistance movement all over again. So we're going to see a lot of the old issues prop up, a lot of cultural issues, stuff like that. But number 3, their biggest issue is going to be immigration, because that is the issue that Trump is really coming out the gate with his promises of mass deportation. So the left is going to 100% double down against that plan. They're going to be very pro-immigrant, very pro-illegal immigrant. They're going to oppose any deportations at all. And that is going to be the topic of their major protests around the Trump presidency in the beginning, especially at the inauguration, where these types of groups are already coordinating to be there. So those are my predictions. Let me know what you think. Head over to the Substack, carlin.substack.com. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I do read all the comments on the Substack. I respond to many of them. It's probably the best place to interact with me, because it's just a much nicer environment than Twitter or YouTube. Everyone is civil on Substack. So go ahead, go over to the Substack, leave a comment. And again, if you appreciate what I do and you want to support it, please sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. You get a variety of perks, including private Zoom calls with me, including access to my supporter Discord, including a perpetual 10% off in the Unwoke Art store, which is unwokeart.com. That is my merchandise store, and you can buy all sorts of cool anti-communist merch. That's all I have for right now. We'll see you guys soon.